This is Ambition Today. Today we are joined by Gabe Zichermann. He is the CEO and founder of Onward, which helps people achieve tech-life balance by reducing their excessive screen time.
These are the entrepreneurs, creators, investors, and builders who ambitiously change to the world. Explore the hardships and heroisms of everyday life while we reveal the key moments to leave behind a lasting legacy. This is Ambition Today with Kevin Siskar.
What's up, world? I am Kevin Siskar, and you are listening to Ambition Today. Make sure you subscribe on our website, siskar.co, or in your favorite podcast app, Spotify, Apple, Google, wherever, so you never miss the latest episode of Ambition Today. And you can also now join the show's back channel, the A-List, short for Ambition List, to get exclusive clips from Ambition Today guests, such as the single greatest piece of advice our guests have ever received. Such as last episode when we talked to Terry Young, the CEO and founder of Sparks and Honey, a 24/7 culture newsroom identifying the biggest trends happening in the world. But today I'm very excited. We are joined by Gabe Zichermann. He is the CEO and founder of Onward, which helps you achieve tech-life balance by reducing excessive screen time. Gabe, welcome to Ambition Today.
Hello, Kevin, and I'm so excited to be here. I love that this has happened. You're such a unique talent, so it's really great to join you in this convo.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that, and I wouldn't be sitting here if it wasn't for you. So I'm excited to hear more about your story. So you're a New Yorker at heart, but you recently moved to the West Coast. Let's set the scene for the audience today. Where are you? Where are you coming from?
Yeah, so I'm in Los Angeles. I'm in downtown Los Angeles in the Watermark Tower, which for a New Yorker is about as close as you can get to the energy of New York. I'm up on the 15th floor. I have a view of downtown LA. And it is, of course, sunny and in the high 60s today, despite being wintertime. So it's a beautiful day in Los Angeles.
Awesome. Well, speaking about New York, growing up in New York, give us a glimpse into your early life and maybe share with us just a few lessons from that time that have stuck with you today.
Yeah, well, so I grew up in Toronto, actually, which is like Canada's New York. But most people tend to think of me as a New Yorker, perhaps because I'm kind of Jewy, but perhaps just because I lived in New York for a long time and did a lot of work there. But so growing up in Toronto, my parents are immigrants, and I'm the eldest child in the generation of my family. My parents came from Hungary and Romania, and my broader family was quite well-to-do, like lots of professional doctors and lawyers and so on. But my parents were more blue-collar and did kind of more customer service jobs. But my mom was also an entrepreneur, and she had a number of businesses while I was growing up, including a company that manufactured cookware, like pots and pans, and also a couple of retail stores. And she used to sell at markets. And so my first experience actually kind of selling or being in an entrepreneurial environment was with my mom selling at these markets when I was very young. So starting around the age of 10, I would periodically go with her.
This is definitely a theme that we've seen throughout the show is entrepreneurial people had some sort of early childhood or early life exposure to an uncle or a mom. And for anyone looking to start a fund with a unique investment thesis, you should just start a fund around investing in people that had entrepreneurial parents. So keeping it going here, when did you fall in love with games? We're going to talk a lot about gamification on this episode. I know from talking with you that a particular game, which I have also played more than I should probably admit, Civilization, played a role in that journey for you.
Yeah, I mean, so my earliest technology memory is it was 1982. So I'm a little bit older than you are. It was 1982, and I was 8 years old, and my parents scrimped and saved their money because, like I said, we were not wealthy. And they went out and bought me my first computer, which was a VIC-20, Commodore VIC-20. And about 3 weeks later, I learned my first lesson of the technology business, which has become then my home for my entire adult life, when the Commodore 64 came out and the VIC-20 suddenly was obsolete, within a few weeks of this purchase. But I remember my parents being like, okay, we're going to buy this computer for you because you are kind of nerdy. And I remember my dad saying, I think computers are going to be kind of a big thing, so you should probably get into them. So I was like, okay. And so I got this computer, and I did exactly what every nerdy kid does when getting a new computer at first, which is I tried to program a game. And so for the very beginning of my, technology experience, my first instinct was programming a game. And at that time, there were these game programming books that were produced where you could copy code that had been written and build your own games. And so I remember writing a bunch of those, writing a bunch of other stuff, playing these games in the VIC-20. The medium for delivery of content was a cassette tape.
Okay.
So this was before a floppy disk drive. So it was actually like literally an audio cassette tape. And so I used to try to get my hands on as many games as I could, to play via the cassette thing. So really intimately connected to my earliest days as a child, and continued to be a theme all the way through my life.
Yeah. And then how did Civilization come about? I know there's a story about college and Civilization.
Yeah. So the first game, so there's all these games that I'm playing and building and stuff when I'm younger. The first game that really, and there was also Leisure Suit Larry, which when I was just getting into puberty was really exciting. My friends had a bootleg copy of it, and we played it on the Mac in the school, at night, after everyone was gone. It was really funny. But the first game that I was really obsessed with is a game called Civilization, designed by Sid Meier. And in the game you play, somebody who is the head of a tribe from the earliest days of humanity all the way through to the present day and even in the future, developing technology, military, economic, and so on. It's a complicated simulation. And I was a really obsessive Civilization 1 player, and that happened to coincide with the time that I was in college. And I played a lot of it. I mean, I played so much of it in undergrad. And I was at a pretty nerdy school, the University of Waterloo in Canada. But I remember this one night where I was with my roommate. So we were at our dorm or whatever. And my roommate threw this raging party, just a rager. Everyone was over and drinking and da-da-da. And I'm a pretty social person. So my normal reaction to that would be let's hang out and party. But I actually spent the entire night playing Civilization, in the living room while the party happened around me. And I remember being almost in a fishbowl of play, where I was conscious of the world, but I wasn't engaged with it at all. I was just this game, because I was I have to beat this game. One more turn. So,
and for those that don't know, this is a turn-based game. I've played it, and it just sucks you in, because you're it'll be a minute, and you just do that over and over, and it just sucks you in. Yeah. And some people are really not into it because it doesn't have the action elements that are in a lot of other games. It's a lot of strategy, though, and if you're into strategy, it makes you think.
Yeah, for sure. And for me, also optimization, because I'm an optimizer. So I like all games that involve route optimization, process optimization, anything like that gets me really excited.
Yeah.
And so this game, this was my first lesson on the power of games. So even though I played a lot of games and written games prior to that, this was my first real lesson on the power of games. And, on reflection, it was holy crap, how is that possible? How did it do that to me? And so that really laid the seeds for the gamification topic.
Love it. So you've sort of become, in my opinion, the father of gamification to the mainstream tech world in the last wave. For those that don't know, what is gamification? And for those not familiar with gamification, can you maybe give some examples of how it might touch people in their day-to-day besides, playing Fortnite or video games?
Yeah. So gamification is the use of game concepts outside of entertainment, generally speaking, to change people's behavior, get them engaged, help them be motivated. The most classic example that people are generally familiar with are loyalty programs, like airline loyalty programs, that are kind of like a game, but not exactly a game. So they have many of the characteristics of games, including points and levels and sometimes leaderboards and badges and all this kind of stuff. But they're not exactly video games. And that's really gamification's raison d'etre, is to bring together the powerful design mechanics from the games industry, this original experience of being obsessed with with playing these games, and bringing that to other disciplines and domains, whether that's general technology or food or transportation or whatever the case may be. And for the better part of the last decade, starting around 2009, I have been, the person most closely associated with the topic. And I wrote 3 books on it and ran a big conference on it and built a consultancy.
Yeah, I know you ran G Summit, you did a TED Talk, so you've helped all these companies. I guess, what was the moment where you realized the tech landscape was changing, and what changed the way you think about gamification, and as a transition into your new company, Onward?
Yeah, well, there were a couple of different things going on, at that time. So one of the things, just as prior to gamification, I had worked in the games industry. I helped co-found this company called Trimedia, which was the first successful digital distribution company in the game space, kind of like Steam, but before, that was acquired in 2005. And then after that, I did a couple of startups that actually didn't really go anywhere. And the gamification topic came out of just an area of interest of mine. I was like, we sold Trimedia, the company, 2005. And I still had a speaking gig booked as a Trimedia person for 2006 at the next conference. This conference called Casual Connect, which is a casual games conference that takes place around the world. And in fact, the founder of that conference series is really super successful, used to work for me at Trimedia. And she went on to do this amazing thing, Jessica. And so I had the speaking gig booked at this conference, and I messaged Jessica after Trimedia was sold, and I said, "Hey, you probably don't want me to come anymore because I'm not involved with this company, and I'm kind of independent. I don't know what I'm going to do." And Jess said to me, she goes, "No, actually, you're a good speaker. You'll come up with something. Why don't you come and just do a talk, right?"
Yeah.
And so I was like, "Okay, it's cool. I get to see my friends. I get to hang out." So I go to do this talk. It was in Amsterdam. At Casual Connect Amsterdam, was in Amsterdam, and I get up on stage and I'm like, what if we could make everything more like a game? That was literally my thing. What if game concepts could be used elsewhere? And I didn't have the term gamification. I didn't really have a frame for that. And the reaction at that event was really terrible. People were just like, "I don't get it. This doesn't make any sense. What are you even talking about? That's crazy."
Yeah.
I only had 1 or 2 people come up and talk to me afterwards. And that's often the measure of how impactful your talk was, is how many people make an effort to talk to you. So I was kind of like, okay, this did not resonate. But as I marinated on the topic more and more, I was kind of like, okay, no, but there's something interesting here. And I started to kind of talk about it and blog about it, write about it. And in 2008, I was invited to, I suggested a panel for, and then was invited to one, which was about new next generation game ideas at the Web 2.0 conference. And this was the first time that I actually ran into other people who were working on the same topic. So we didn't know each other. And we were just sort of introduced for the first time in 2008, similar ideas, thinking about the same thing. And so that happened in 2008. And that was really the trigger for me as far as getting the gamification topic to happen, getting it off the ground.
All right. Awesome. So taking a step back for a sec, you're at this gamification conference. Prior to that, what was your first job out of school?
Well, so interestingly, I was sort of young when I finished school. I was actually 20 when I graduated from grad school, so I was a little young relative to most of my peers. And so in grad school, which was an MBA program at Rollins in Florida, in grad school, in my first year, I befriended a number of professors, amazing professors like Barry Render, who's a world famous operations management teacher. Barry really befriended me and became a mentor of mine. And he connected me with my first technology industry job outside of, stuff that I just built for myself, which was with this electronic medical records company called Vistion. And man, I loved it. These were my people. I found my people. They were nerdy and fun and really sweet. And we were working on an interesting project. That was 1995. And we were like, electronic medical records are just around the corner. And of course it's, 2018 and we still don't have them.
Yeah.
But anyway, so, what was really interesting was my first startup. They were a spin out from a big company, and they'd raised some money. So it was actually like really a great learning experience. I loved it. I was like, great, I'm going to stay. I'm going to work here. And in the beginning of my last year of school, so for like January of the last part, so 5 months before graduation, the president of the company, Thad, sat me down and he was like, oh, let's go to lunch. And we went to lunch and he said, so Gabe, listen, we love you. We love having you here, but this company in this town are too small for your talent and you need to go to Silicon Valley. You can't stay here. He's like, if what you really want to do is stay here, you have a job with us, indefinitely, but we really think you need to go. And I honestly like burst into tears as soon as I was out of his view. I was like, what are you talking about? Like, that feels like somebody saying it's not you, it's me, when they're breaking up with you, but they're still breaking up with you.
Yeah.
And so I was like way behind all my grad school colleagues. They almost all had jobs already, lined up for the end of school. And I was like not looking because I had this job. Yeah. And so the other kind of interesting lesson, I learned a number of lessons there, which have carried through to this day. The first one is, as a mentor to like many people who've worked for me, or who've partnered with me or interned for me or whatever, one of my things is always to try to like figure out what is the best fit for that person, and to help them understand that I'm an advocate for their growth in their own career, rather than it being about like what I selfishly want from them,
Right.
Because Thad and them actually made a really selfless kind of call at that moment. And I've talked to a bunch of them after the fact, and, they were all like, I was really smart. I was really cheap. I was doing something really important for them. So they were like, this was a costly decision, but they did it because they knew that my long-term potential was greater than what was, presented right in front of me. And the second lesson that I learned, which is definitely carried through to this day, is having the ability to shift gears, like really reboot quickly, is very valuable. Because basically I was like, oh shit, I don't have a job anymore.
Yeah.
I got to find a job. And, they helped me, and I pulled everything together, and I like really focused hard, and I got my first job out of grad school working for Cisco in San Jose.
Okay,
and
nice.
At that time, nobody knew who that company was. They thought it was the like food service company, SYSC.
Yeah.
But I was like, no, this networking thing, it's going to be a big deal. Just watch it. And so I went out to the Valley, and in this first job, I made more money than my immigrant parents' salaries put together. So like my opening salary at the age of 20 at Cisco was more than what my parents had earned put together. And
that's a powerful moment.
Oh my God. Yeah. And for an immigrant kid, it's especially like, it's so, you're so trained to like focus and think about stuff like that, and helping to secure your family and make things stable and all this kind of stuff, that I was just like, okay, well, this is great. And then the problems started. They started fairly quickly thereafter. And for the next 3 years, I really struggled. I worked at Cisco. I worked at Nortel, was called Bay Networks at the time. I worked at Checkpoint Software, the Israeli security company. And in each case, they were paying me more and more money. They were more and more convinced that I would be able to execute on bigger and bigger visions for them. And I was less and less happy with each subsequent choice. And I didn't really understand until later that actually the reason why I was unhappy, because I was not doing something that I actually was passionate about. I was not doing something that I was actually interested in. Mm-hmm. I was passionate about making money and stock options and like being able to do whatever I wanted. But I wasn't passionate about the work. And that reflected very quickly in the quality of the work that I did. And so I remember one day driving back home, and I was having trouble, like relationship trouble with my boyfriend at the time. And I was driving back up from my job from the Valley to San Francisco, which takes a long time. And I had a moment where I actually considered killing myself. I really fantasized about what it would feel like to run the car into the concrete meridian between the two, the median between the two sides of the freeway. And I fantasized.
And this is a point in your life where you're, by all means, according to you yourself 10 years ago, are like the epitome of success.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like, I'm working for this super hot startup. I'm being paid all this money. I get to do all this stuff. Like, it's all these stock options. Like, I'm going to be rich. And all of a sudden I'm miserable. And that for me was a wake up call about having to do something that, even though it would be costly to me, and it would be really costly, even though it would end up leaving me broke for the first time in my kind of cycle as an entrepreneur, and it's not the last time, but it was the first time. I was like, I have to do this. I got to change. And so I went and got my first job in the video game business, because I was like, what am I passionate about? I love video games. I played all this Civilization. I, used to make these games. Wouldn't it be cool to work in games? And I got a really cool job working for some amazing people on Game Developers Conference. And that really started my career in the direction that eventually became, gamification and now Onward.
So, staying on that moment for a sec. So what advice would you have to other people that maybe feel stuck or afraid or, terrified to reinvent themselves, and maybe they're miserable or in a similar place? What advice would you have for them to do so, to, just take a step back and reboot, as you said?
Well, so I think most people in my position would answer with something like, you have to just follow your dreams and don't worry, it'll be okay, or do what you love and the money will follow. And actually, I have to say that despite all of those things, despite being a lot older and having a lot of success under my belt, and also some failures, I'm still all of those things, Kevin. I'm still afraid. I still feel stuck, despite, and people look at this, they look at my situation and they think like, how could this person, super independent, really like able to do kind of whatever I want, how could this person feel that way? And the truth is, I think it's either in your nature to be cautious and plotting and process oriented and all these kinds of things, or you lack that gene and you love to like hella ski and like, do X game, like you have no fear of anything, right? Or you have a bunch of different fears. And so the most important thing is to actually understand who you are and what your strengths and weaknesses are, and be able to name the shit that comes up. So you have to be able to name it. You got to say, okay, I'm afraid of failure. Okay, I'm afraid of letting my dad down. Okay, like I am easily embarrassed and I don't want people to know that this thing didn't work out. Whatever those things are, you just have to be like honest about where you're at and who you are, and not try to pretend like you're Travis Kalanick when you're not, unless you are. Right. Right. That's the, and Travis is actually somebody that I really admire. I've known him for a long time, and he, bull in a china shop, made Uber happen, by hook or by crook. Yeah. I'm not as fearless. So I'm much more conservative in a way. And, for better or worse, it's a thing that I continue to struggle with. And I think people like me, it never really goes away.
Yeah, I agree with that. And that's also a theme we've seen throughout the podcast. And we were even talking to Terry about it last episode, how, the earlier in life you could do that self-work. Almost every entrepreneur that's good or great has done this self-work. And it's part of the journey and the path. And the sooner you could figure it out, the less there is to hold you back.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think, and I would say whatever Terry said is probably true, because he's like one of the smartest guys I know. But I would also say that, I think one of the most important tools in the arsenal of a successful entrepreneur is your psychotherapist. And many of my contemporaries turn to drugs as an alternative. So they take antidepressants or Adderall or whatever the like cocktail is that gets them, through the day. But I want to remind you of that song Comfortably Numb, because I think it's actually like a very important song and everybody should listen to it. And it's like, if you're not engaged with your own discomfort every single day, if you don't actually feel it, you don't work through it. You just defer decisions until later. And let me tell you something, making a whole bunch of money, getting through the gauntlet, successfully launching a company or whatever, the shit that you feel, the ways you feel worthless or weak, they don't go away.
Yeah.
They're right there. They're still there. So now you have a huge bank account, right? But you still feel really insecure about everything. So that's not going to fix it. The only thing that will help you fix it, or at least navigate it, or even just be able to live with it, depending on your inclination, is to do the self work. And I believe in a psychotherapist as a partner in that.
I second that as well. So let's take a quick break. We're here with Gabe Zichermann, talking about his journey and his new company Onward, and we will be right back with more.
This is Ambition Today.
If you are enjoying this episode of Ambition Today, then please leave us a review in the iTunes Store, Spotify, wherever you're listening. If you don't know how to do that, you can visit syscar.co and I'll show you how. Ambition Today is happy to partner with WeWork, a co-working space that lets you do what you love. WeWork has offices in over 140 locations worldwide, and many of our own companies use WeWork for their startups. We've partnered here in New York with WeWork Labs, with Founders Institute New York, and it's been an amazing experience for our founders. So visit syscar.co/WeWork to learn more. And Audible. Visit audibletrial.com/ambition today to download and keep any audiobook for free. Gabe, is there a book on Audible or not on Audible that you would recommend people get and check out?
I loved Tiffany Haddish's autobiography, The Last Black Unicorn.
Okay.
It is so funny. It is so amazing. She's really vulnerable. She's really real about the challenges of growing up in foster care and some of the weird situations that she's found herself in her life. And I think, and I would say it's especially powerful because women of great success and power often are challenged by being vulnerable because they're in such a difficult environment, I think, and people don't respect and value their vulnerability very much. So this is especially interesting because she is, she's a superstar who is very comfortable telling you about the challenges of her life.
I love it. Thank you for the recommendation. If you want to check out Tiffany Haddish's book on Audible, you can go to audibletrial.com/ambition today to download and listen for free. Now back to this episode of Ambition Today.
Visit Ambition Today online at syscar.co and follow the show on social media at Ambition Today.
Welcome back. We are here with Gabe Zichermann, and we're talking about his journey through entrepreneurship, life, and now his new company, Onward. So, Gabe, before the break, we talked about your journey through life, and it's a pretty amazing story so far. Let's talk quickly about your new company, Onward. What is it? And tell me a little bit about this restaurant moment you had where you realized that the landscape was shifting in how tech was being built.
Yeah. So in my work in gamification, I worked with all kinds of big companies and governments, and I've trained literally thousands of people on how to do gamification design. And throughout that entire process, I really I was aware of the kind of ethical challenges. I made everyone who trained with me, for example, had to sign an ethics pledge in order to get their certification, which is about not abusing users and consumers. But nonetheless, I was kind of I've always been you can't put technology back in the bottle, and people are not going to go backwards. And, we can do great things with tech. And I still believe all of those things to be true. But I had a moment, I was out to dinner in New York, I think at Cook Shop, if memory serves. And I had a moment and I was looking around, and everybody I saw around me was on their phone. And, this is even before the Black Mirror, the Black Mirror episode about, live gamification, which was, just Black Mirror. Black Mirror's
Black Mirror's great.
It turns a knife for a technology person like me. But so I looked around and everyone was on their phones, and I just thought, this is messed up. This is really not cool. And so I got together with a couple of other guys who were also thinking about the addiction space, broadly speaking, and what the implications were for us going forward. And so we started Onward at the beginning of 2016 with an eye to, working on this problem. And it's been a really interesting journey.
Yeah, I think it's been interesting. I mean, I remember when you started Onward, and I remember thinking, oh, that's interesting. And now 2018, it's like, that's all anyone's talking about, right? So you were really, really ahead of the curve. And I actually taught a productivity and managing attention in the digital age. I taught a course on that on Skillshare, and I featured Onward in it. And 15,000 people have taken the course so far, checked out Onward.
Amazing.
So I love it. So where is Onward today in 2018? How has it grown and where is it going?
Well, interestingly, Onward actually hasn't grown that much over obviously it's bigger than just two guys, but it hasn't grown that much over the course of the 2 years, where it's grown and shrunk and grown and shrunk as we've been trying to figure out product market fit. And this has been a very interesting journey for me in that regard, because this is the second or third time that I've launched a company in which the initial kind of idea is really on trend. It's really right. The timing is really good. But the initial product, the first version of the product, just doesn't have the customer adoption, doesn't have the reaction. There's not I remember listening to Reid Hoffman's podcast, and he was talking about how, having 100 really passionate users of your product is more valuable than having 1 million mediocre users of your product. And I wish I would have thought of that actually prior to the starting, because you always get the advice that it's got to be scale, and you've got to get large markets. Your TAM has to be huge. And I think while all those things are true, the initial focus needs to be on this more artisanal product market fit question until you can perfect it. So that's what we're doing right now. I mean, we're literally doing customer feedback, customer journey conversations, taking those customer feedbacks and putting them into product plans. It is at this exact moment in time a very handmade process where we're trying to really get the product to work.
Nice. And I know you were featured on 60 Minutes to talk about the harmful effects of addictive technology.
Yeah.
And then this week, all the news came out about Cambridge Analytica. And for those who aren't familiar with that, basically a data company based in the UK, which essentially stole Facebook data and then used that data to influence culture and the election. And actually just want to play a quick clip for everyone to hear from the whistleblower from Cambridge Analytica that leaked it.
Yeah. And then from there, it was like you took that to America to change the perception of reality for America.
Yeah. And the reason why he was interested in this is because he follows this idea of the Breitbart doctrine, which is that if you want to change politics, you first have to change culture, because politics flows from culture. And so what I said is that if you want to change culture, you have to first understand what the units of culture are. People are the units of culture. So if you want to change politics, you first have to change people to change the culture.
Did that fit in with, he had quite a famous expression about politics being war?
If you want to fight a battle, or you want to fight a war, you want to win a war, you need weapons for that. He wanted cultural weapons, and we could build them for him. But
so on that clip right there, cultural weapons. How should clearly this is things are being co-opted, right? So my question is, how as a society should or people in society should we be thinking about our relationship with technology and the companies that create it?
I think the Cambridge Analytica story feeds directly into the thing that I've been advocating for, and the reason why Onward is designed the way that it's designed. You cannot trust any large corporation to act in the long-term best interests of society or culture or you as an individual. You sign away so many rights when you agree to one of those terms of service, and that's not going to change. People are trying to put pressure on Facebook to be less kind of addictive and less less compulsion oriented. But it's their whole business model depends on the time that you spend scrolling through their site. What is your alternative for them other than doing this? And so I think the only way to actually deal with this is to give individuals their own personal defensive algorithm. And that could take many different forms. Mm-hmm. But screen time, manage how much time you're spending with technology. But you could imagine a version of that or an offshoot of that that's about privacy. You need your own software that is defending you against the bots of your vendors' software, because they are trying to get as much of your attention and time and manipulate you as much as they can. So there's a little bit of like a spiral there, because it's like, okay, well, how do you trust the companies that you use for your personal defensive algorithm? And so I think ultimately, the investment, the place that I would encourage all of us to end up with is that there are, startups and established companies who have no other allegiances other than to you. You pay them to help you with their screen time, like you would with Onward. You pay us to help you reduce your screen time. That is, you are the only person that we care about. We have no other business model. We make our money. We're successful because we help you. And that has to be the relationship. And then our job is to help you break and keep to the limits that you said you want to set. And I think that we could replicate this idea in many different domains. And in the rise of AI, it's literally, just consider this. Facebook engineers don't actually know how the Facebook algorithm runs anymore, because it's a machine learning system and it's a black box, and machine learning systems generally cannot be easily interrogated from the outside to understand the process by which they actually learn. This will increasingly be the reality that we live in. And as that progresses, there's lots of ways to deal with it. But as that progresses, one of the things that will no longer work is like traditional regulation will no longer work. The machines will steal your data, and then you'll say, oh, you broke EU data rules or whatever. And the companies will be like, it was the machines.
Yeah. Which we're starting to see happen already. So
yeah.
So I've heard, so speaking about like repeating patterns of new technology, I guess, how do you view what's happening right now with, mobile and tech and data, right? And how do you compare that to past waves of new technology basically being co-opted for abusive purposes?
Yeah. I think this is an old story in humanity, right? Like every time a new powerful medium comes into the focus, it's uniquely able to manipulate people because it is new and it's taking advantage of newer technologies. A good example of this is film, because in the very early days of film, the Nazis very successfully used film to as propaganda. Leni Riefenstahl, famously a filmmaker working on Hitler's behalf, and so that's it was a really powerful tool. Now today, it would have less of an effect on you. The same kind of propaganda would be less influential because time has elapsed, and we wouldn't say like, oh, let's get rid of film because sometimes film is used for propaganda. We wouldn't do that. So I think the same thing is true of all of these manipulative technologies of today, with one big exception. So what's different about today's situation is that these addicting technologies are based on learning algorithms. And so those algorithms are actually designed to override your willpower, to actually use your willpower against you. The way that they work is they are constantly running tests against you to see what will produce the optimal result. And they do that over time, and they do that, by category or whatever. And so over time, like the Facebook algorithm has this huge corpus of data on you specifically, Kevin Zichermann, not people like you also, but just you specifically. So over time, they're able to get better and better and better at feeding you things that you want, feeding you things that will get you to continue to click and scroll and click and scroll. And that's how we end up with this election in 2016. That underlying mechanism. It's not Cambridge Analytica, by the way. It's actually this idea that you can extract all this data and understanding. But while it's easy to pile on Facebook, I want to point out that just about every company in our economy would love to be able to have that capability. Taco Bell, if it could, would get you to eat every single meal at Taco Bell. That would be a fantasy situation for them. They would love to be able to do that.
Crunchwrap Supremes all day.
Right. And for them, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, that would be a win, right? And so the important thing for us to all be conscious of as consumers and members of the society is that as the technology that Facebook and Google and Snapchat have built to make their products more addictive. As that technology becomes democratized, and it will, the cost of it will go down, and it will be in the hands of just about every business in our economy. There's no company, government, agency, nothing that won't try to use these technologies. I can tell you firsthand from gamification, everybody came to my conference, people you wouldn't even imagine coming from different, domains, applying the techniques. And the same thing will be true of learning algorithms, except writ large. So I think we need to work on the other side of it. I don't think there's an effective regulatory framework, and definitely not a self-regulatory framework that's going to change this at all.
Well, I love that idea about having your own personal suit of armor, a defense. I love what you guys are building with Onward. Quickly transitioning here, moving on to the Ambition Today question of the day. If you have a question for the pod, go to syscar.co and submit your question for a future episode. So, on the topic of tech-life balance, how do you recommend people keep themselves in check? Because it's like being in a weird relationship, right? It's like sometimes it's hard to tell what is and isn't normal outside of your own world when you don't have a baseline to compare it to.
Yeah. So let me actually say normal should not be the standard by which you measure yourself in this particular regard. I think the important thing is to be aware. And this is how we designed Onward. This was our idea. Be aware of behaviors that you think you do too much of. Don't worry about asking whether you're addicted to them or whether they're hurting you or anything like that. If you become aware of a behavior, an app, a site, a thing that you're doing where you think, I'm doing this more than I would like, or this doesn't make me feel good when I do it, that's a moment that to put into your pile of awareness, and that's a thing to act on. And so I feel like there's a lot of advice floating out there about how to reduce your screen time, but most of it is not really based on science. So what we've really tried to do is transpose the science of addiction and compulsion to the domain of screen time. And part of our learning at Onward has been, it's not straightforward. Like people will say, switch your phone to grayscale and that'll solve your problem. But there's literally no evidence that actually works. There is no evidence. So it's like, okay, what we need are the things which are based in evidence, the things which clearly can be seen. And that's things like cognitive behavioral therapy, mindfulness meditation, blocking, even exercising more will help you use less screen time.
Yeah, I'm a big advocate for exercising. More endorphins, the happier you are. Gabe,
and that's why you're always so happy. You live at the gym.
I've been trying to work out a lot more because you've been through times when I don't work out and I can tell a difference in my own mental capacity and yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, Gabe, I want to thank you for coming on this episode. For those listening, the show notes, everything we talked about referenced, those will be up on the website. Thank you for coming on. What anything you want to plug? Anything people should check out? Your Twitter, Onward.
Yeah, feel free to download if you think you're overusing your screens in some way or another. Download Onward. It's onward.org. So easy to find. And on Twitter, I am G Zichermann, Zicherm.
Awesome. Everyone go check out Gabe on Twitter. I've been following you for years. For those of you on the A-list, we will see you in a few minutes with the bonus segment. For everyone else, stay curious, and I will see you all on the next episode of Ambition Today.
Thanks for listening to Ambition Today. Be sure to visit syscar.co to get all the information from this episode and more great content. Until next time, stay curious, everyone.